All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. My name is Eugene Turk. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Align, and I want to welcome you to our monthly coach webinar for February 2022. I hope that everyone is doing well, and thanks so much for joining us today. This morning, we are thrilled to have Will Scott with a presentation on the gift of culture, people and profits prioritized with 9 deeds in 90 days. For those of you who may not be familiar with Will, he is the author of The Culture Fix and founder of the Culture Fix Academy. Will has helped hundreds of businesses fulfill their corporate culture dreams. He leads workshops and speaks regularly using his Alive, Thrive, and Drive methodology, and is the host of the Culture Fix podcast. His 25-year span as an entrepreneur include 5 startups, 2 exits, and several Inc. 5000 appearances, as well as time spent in EO, both as an accelerator and a facilitator for EO chapters around the world. We are honored to have Will present for us this month. As always, just one administrative matter. We do want this to be as educational and informational for all of you as possible. So please feel free to pose questions about any of the content that Will is presenting, but do so using the chat feature. And we will direct as many of those questions to Will at the conclusion. Hi, everybody. My internet just went momentarily, and
okay.
I'm terribly sorry about that. I don't know where I lost you all, but I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to Will.
Yes, thank you, Eugene. So clearly you are having some internet issues. I hope everybody hears me okay, and I have a good connection. Yes, hello to entrepreneurs, business owners, business coaches. I'm excited to spend some time. Thank you. Somebody's confirming that they can see and hear me fine. So if we lose Eugene again, I'll just keep going. I think the system will stay up for the rest of us. So you're all over the world, I understand. Thank you for coming today. And yes, there's 9 deeds in 90 days. We're not going to try and go through all 9 deeds today, but we are going to show the best tools and strategies that I've learned by leading culture around under the headings of Alive, Thrive, and Drive. But before I share my deck, I'd like to share a story about from my boyhood. You see, when I was growing up in Zambia, I used to love building clubhouses. And I used to build tree houses, forts on stilts. I built a cave and also a bamboo hut underneath a mango tree. And in all these clubhouses, I used to put a lot of love and care into building them, but I wanted to share them with my friends. And what I didn't realize is that I was obviously cared about the experience they would have when they came into my clubhouse, into my tree house, because I used to always nail some rules to the side of the clubhouse. A bit like the way we put core values up in our corporations and in our businesses, maybe even our homes today. And I remember that feeling that when my friends came around, really feelings of joy. There I am in the African sunset in my treehouse, and I'm enjoying my friends. And one of the rules was be nice to each other. And so as soon as my friends won't be nice to each other, I could say, hey, Stuart, hey, Daigoro, remember, we all agreed to be nice. And those magic words, I feel, are very underused in corporations today when we talk about our core values. Hey, we all agree. And you see, I believe that all organizations have some kind of a culture, whether it's written or unwritten. And whether it's written or unwritten really determines the success of that organization. It'll determine whether, for example, in your company, your employees want to stay there, and be a part of you because they like the way it feels in your culture, or where they're going to want to run and find a new place to share their talents. And of course, in the era of the Great Resignation, this has become, even more important. So over the next few minutes, about 30 minutes or so presentation, then we'll go into Q&A. I would like to share with you some of the best things that I have learned, first as an entrepreneur, leading first by culture, and then now as a sort of coach and consultant, helping lots of other companies with their culture. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'm sure you'll tell me if it doesn't transition. Hopefully everyone's seen this first welcome screen with the Align webinar. And I'd like to definitely thank Align for this opportunity. I'm excited to spend time with you all today. So changing to the next screen, just making sure that my slide is advanced, Eugene, and you can see the cultural definition from my second company, which is a mobile app development company. Yes, has everyone seen the screen transition? I'm looking for a chat confirmation or something. Yes, Eugene? All right, thank you. So this is the way we had our our values defined at my company, a mobile app development company. And we were into Star Wars and the Avengers, so you can see the theme here of superheroes. And these are some of the things that I think are really important in a cultural definition. Yes, you have a core value. Yes, you may have descriptive behaviors, which is very important to say, what do we mean by that value in our company? But perhaps it also could help you bring your culture alive if you personified or use some imagery. In this case, for exude passion and energy, we had Passionista, and this superhero here character that we designed in-house because I had a design team. I had about 85 employees before I sold this company. And we had our own design team who designed these characters for us. But I'll show you, if you don't have your internal design team, how to get help with that later. And here's another one of our values, deliver success, represented by Danny Deliver. And you'll see this UPS kind of a chap with a cheetah representing speed and delivering success. And our subtext here is we care and we do what we say, which is that big accountability kind of thing that we're striving for in all our companies, aren't we? That our employees, if they would just do what they said, how great that would be. So this was our cultural definition, and it started to take on a life of its own. Before long, we had life-size murals on the walls. We had one Christmas, my team gave me costumes representing each of the values. And so at each town hall or each weekly meeting, I would be wearing one of the costumes that represented the value that we were highlighting for that week. So you'll see Danny Deliver here, and this is Captain and Clients, and here's T and Walk for work as a team. We also had a theme song. So the way we announced the start of our song was with Black Eyed Peas, Let's Get It Started in Here. And I really recommend that all the arts are brought to the fore to really make our culture engaging, get that excitement going, get those juices flowing. So it's a great thing to do with your team too. Ask them, what theme song would help represent your culture and could be used to kick off your meetings? But I knew we were onto something when my team came to me one day and said, hey, Will, I think we should have a guide, a process for how we work with customers. I thought, amazing. What would that look like? And this is what they came back with. So look at some of the things here. The goal, we always had a goal for all our Lex guides, our processes. The company was called LexTech. To earn and keep our clients' trust, provide service worthy of glowing referrals. My team wrote this, not me. I was no longer having to bring all the energy to the culture and the leadership. They just cared about the experience that our clients were getting from all the company. So some took the initiative to do this, and you'll see they represented it with their superhero Captain Client appropriately. You know, Gallup do the research every year and find out that 3/4 of all employees are disengaged in the workplace. I believe my employees were very much engaged. They were wanting to go the extra mile and do that a little bit more with things like this. So hopefully you can read some of those words. I won't go through them all, but this is when we knew we had a special mojo. And so when I sold that company, my friends, a lot of them in the entrepreneurs organization and in Vistage and YPO and so on, perhaps companies like yours, asked me to come and help them with their culture. In that company that I sold, we grew 650% in 6 years. And I believe our success was largely due to the the fact that we were leading with a culture first mentality. So now I've written a couple of books, and in fact, we're going to be offering one of these books. My second book, this came out in December, and this is a fable, a story of how a coach, with whether that's an external coach or an internal coach for the company, helped implement my first book, The 90s and 90 Days from the Culture Fix, to get that dream culture. And so you're all welcome to download this book and take what you would like from this at the end of the seminar. And one of my latest iterations of my own business as a coach is to have an academy where I'm inviting folks to sign up and subscribe, and they can then have all our materials and go and implement the culture fix in their own company. And there's a huge demand right now. Culture has always been important, but right now it's particularly important, as I'm sure you are aware, because everyone is trying to retain their best employees and then, of course, be able to hire as they grow. And it's a very competitive market. So maybe there's something here for you. And speaking of that, all companies have culture issues. Even companies with great cultures have opportunities to improve their culture. I always begin with a survey. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. And those surveys test things like, even in great cultures, can people recite the core values? So more about that in a minute. But whether you're just getting started with your establishing core values, or you have a really established culture, which you think is great, then there's still something here for you. And we use the NPS score to measure that. So I'm going to show you that example too. How do you measure culture? Coming up at the end of this presentation. I'm going to organize my talk down to these three areas of alive, thrive, and drive. When we implement, this is how we do it, roughly 30 days between each of these. So what's some of the best stuff from our Alive workshop? Well, I really recommend surveys, anonymous surveys, to really work with your entire organization, not just the leadership. Lots of people teach to figure out core values and lead with culture from the leadership team. I really teach the opposite. I teach that we should be involving the whole company. So let's survey the whole company. Let's work with people throughout the ranks of the organization for culture and really get those culture czars, those culture champions, promoting your culture. This is very, very typical when we ask how many of your core values can you name. Most employees cannot name all core values. Let's say there's 4 or 5, which is my preferred number. And look at this. Sometimes we get surprises, like what's the value? Well, respect you might expect. Respect you might expect, but kindness perhaps not. So when I see kindness showing up as a value in a company, I see competitive advantage there, and I want to highlight that. And that doesn't come from sitting around in the boardroom with the leaders. That comes from talking and doing surveys with all of the employees in the organization. So we get your feedback like that, and maybe you've got some values, great, we don't change them very often, but we might refresh them, we might tweak them, we might go from 5 to 4 or 3, we might change some of the subtext. But I find mind maps are a great way to work with values and descriptive behaviors in this, like in this example here. Test these with your culture team or throughout your organization. And this is something you might want to do if you've established core values 10 years ago and your company's evolved now. I know in one of my companies, we made a big pivot and the team had largely changed. So that was an occasion for some tweaking to our cultural definition. So that's all I want to say about the alive part of of the teachings in the Culture Fix. What about in the work in the Thrive part? What are the key things in here? And first, a little story about this company, Emergent, in Indianapolis. They're in the construction business. And you'll see their values on the conference room walls here. And their employees walk by these values, walk by this conference room every day. But when I surveyed them, how many of the core values do you think they could remember from memory without looking? And of course, at least half of the organization could only name half of the core values. That's very typical. Half of your employees only being able to name half of your core values. So there's an opportunity to really give them the language that they need. You see, we need to help our employees and our organizational members recall the core values, and then only then can they be used in conversation. Only then can they be used in that hot moment of conflict in the conference room, or only then can they be used when perhaps a salesperson is expressing something in front of a client that we would not, that is not aligned with our cultural definition. So that's why it's important to make sure the values are memorable, easy to recall, and just roll off the tongue. And there's many examples of those on my website. So here's another mind map, as I've said before. So with this company Emergent, we stuck actually with their core values, but we went and got them some descriptive behaviors because they didn't have those yet. And we used a mind map to test what these might look like with their employees before setting them in stone. Having to settle in on the final wording for the corporate description, the core values plus descriptive behaviors, we then went to a 99 Designs crowdsourcing, very inexpensive, $350 at the entry level, to get some proposals from all over the world, and they compete with 99 Designs. The way that model works is those artists compete like this by submitting lots of examples of what the core values could look like in a poster format, which is what we're going for. Really, really important to not just have words, but to have those words told pictorially. Because remember, 65% of learners are visual. So why not present it visually? And with Emergent, once we were done, here's their values, here's the imagery, using, for example, the straight tree trunk to represent their value of integrity, and representing intertwining roots and the strength that these roots give the tree to talk about collaboration. And then down here, you'll see some words that probably is hard to read, so I'm going to emphasize those here. I love to put the why or the core purpose for your organization on this poster right here alongside the core values, so that people can not only use the values to talk about how we work together and where we work, but also can love and have a feeling for why we work, that purpose to their work. And so in this case, this company designs kitchens, but you'll see nothing here talks about kitchens or shiny stainless steel or granite countertops. The purpose of what they do is to create an environment in those kitchens where families can be more connected with each other, can make meaningful memories, and can live their best lives. So I'm just going to get my spotlight. Sorry I didn't do this sooner. So it's a little easier to see my mouse moving around the slides. So yes, we love this core purpose for Emergent. So let me go through another example here. Just going to move this out of the way. So hopefully everyone's still seeing the transitions. I'm now looking at like a sort of we've got characters on a granite mountain face. And let's look at the key elements of what we call the core chart. First one is values. We've talked about that. Next one is descriptive behaviors. We've talked about that. Look how you can make certain keywords pop. So for collaboration, we listen to understand, learn to get it right, and respond to the need. What are the three important words there? Listen, learn, respond. This is one way that we're very diligent about making sure employees can easily refer to this. And Katie, who is the leader of this company, Tevera in Minneapolis, they make software for social workers. She has this on her website, and she says that people are knocking on her door, wondering what it would be like to work at Tevera because of the feeling. And that's what culture is. It's that feeling that we get. And what feeling does this conjure up here about this community and this company? So that's why we love this imagery. And here we're representing integrity, the stoic man on true north in the driven rain, representing integrity in this case. You've seen integrity in both of the last two cultural descriptions. I don't love integrity, but sometimes my clients just want to have integrity. But there are lots of ways to have words that are more different these days and more interesting. So what else on a core chart? Let's have a core number. And the number that describes the number of not profits or like a vision related number of clients or customers or profits, but how about, in this case, it's tied to their why. And it is serving 250,000 helping professionals. And then a core date. These two things are really, really important to culture. You might think these are strategy, but they're important to culture too. Katie's employees will stop her in the hallway and say, Katie, where are we on our route to serving 250,000 by June 30th, 2025? What number are we at? And you see, I believe they are choosing to stay with Tevera to achieve that goal. They're not looking for other work. They love where they work and who they work with, but they've got a why and a purpose to their work. That means they want to stick around for that great day. And this is really important to conjuring that feeling of loyalty amongst your team, so they stay with you. And then finally, the why. We serve those who serve others. Why? So they can serve better. I remember hanging out with Simon Sinek one time, and I said to Simon, I've got my why all figured out. I create environments where people thrive. And he said to me, well, you can probably guess, what did he say when I said, Simon, I like to create environments where people thrive? He said, why? Right? He's the why guy. And it came to me, oh, so they can be the best that they can be. And he said, that's better. He didn't say it's great. He said, that's better. And so I think a lot of us with our why, we think it's really a what. So look at this. We serve those who serve others. That's really a what. Why? Oh, so they can serve better. And now this service mentality is going right through this organization. And in their signature emails, you'll see, how can I serve you better today? Really cool. So here's another example of a before, and I think probably some of your core values may look like this. Black text on a white piece of paper. But this is a much more engaging place to be with your cultural definition. And Megan, one of the owners of this company, she was disengaged in her company until we got them thinking like this and got them thinking that these clients of this pepper spray are actually heroes, saving and protecting lives. This CEO was bored in his own company until we helped him see the balance here between his investors and his borrowers. He can't lend money to his borrowers unless his investors put funds into the organization. So we came up with this Zen-like image of balance for him. And of course, had his core values here with the all-important we statement that really is like a promise. We promise. And look, balance is even one of his core values. So this was a really cool core chart with his core purpose stated down here that came from this. And his employees didn't know what his core values are when they were handed this on the left. They couldn't know where to find that. This is now over the reception in their office. And it's been posted in the conference rooms so the employees can refer to it at any time. Really, really powerful. And a fun thing to do with your teams is to go from simply having words to truly having some sort of a emotive visual. for your cultural definition, not just your values, but also your purpose. And perhaps you can come up with something like this. Why are images so important, and why do I spend so much time on this particular point? Well, look at this research from Robert Horn at Stanford. It's really that old metaphor that we've heard: a picture tells 1,000 words. When words and visual elements are closely intertwined, people, check it out, we augment our communal intelligence. Who wouldn't want to augment communal intelligence and increase human bandwidth? That's why it's worth doing the effort of getting a really great looking core chart for your business. And you'll notice that the core charts answer the big questions. What are we trying to do? Who for? Why? When? And so we can answer all of those in the core chart. And here's some examples that we've done for a number of companies. If you think any of these could be helpful in your own case, then please reach out. But please note it's not always cartoon characters, because that's not always appropriate. Here's one for Arizona State University, which has this more global look to it. And people, companies, just like yours and mine, basically are benefiting from this. So that's all I want to say about the thrive part of bringing our core values, helping them thrive with those visual elements. Let's look at some of the tools in Drive. Drive is really important part. This is now we've got our definition. Now we're going to make sure we're using it every day. And so how do we make that run through the organization? And so I'll share just a couple of tools. Can't go into everything, obviously, but the rest of them are all laid out in the book, which you'll get to download at the end if you find that helpful. One more thing before I go on to my Drive part of the presentation here. And these are my values for my company. So you'll notice that I've gone for words that are a little bit different. And I love it when our core workflow. So this is how work flows through the academy. And it's lined up with our values. So here, in this case of abundancia, the gift of culture, we just give away all our stuff and hope people can make great use of that. I guess I haven't got time to go through them all, but Churchillian, this is the exuberant part, the inspirational part when we launch our beautiful cultural definition. So when you've got this, I really encourage you to layer your values into the way work flows through the organization. And that's just another thing that helps your employees really embed the values in them. Okay, a couple of tools around the drive part. This is a simple way to actually measure or rank your employees against your culture. Put your core values across the top, put your employees down this left-hand side here, and simply assign a value using something like this. This person demonstrates this value all of the time through none of the time. A score of 3 through 0. And good scores are going to be green. An amber score, I find you can train. You can train someone that's here by giving them feedback about the values. Tell them real stories about when you observed them perhaps not hitting the value. And they can perhaps move up into the green zone. But I've also found that people that just score really low across the board are never going to be trained. These are the folks in your organizations that some people refer to with names like asshole, stuff like that. They are best unhired. I don't like the word fire. I like to say unhired. And so these folks are probably best unhired. And that's when everybody in your company goes, oh, thank goodness for that. They finally got rid of that person that was spoiling our culture here. If there's some name that comes up at the management team over and over again and something niggles you in your gut, do this exercise and it'll make it really clear to you what your decision should be. This helps us make decisions around what to do with employees. And here's another key thing. Try putting your customers down this margin and give your customers a rating for values. And you will find, as sure as sure that your best customers are in the green zone. And those are ones where there's less friction and you're making more money. You will find that your worst customers who drain your team are down here scoring red. And you might want to think about unhiring that customer too. It'll change your organization overnight when your team's energy goes working with companies whose values are aligned with yours. Please try this. You'll love it. Once you've got that value, the core score for how your employee ranks against value, place them on this scale here, this left-hand axis, and then give them a number for performance. So in my last case, I had 12, right? The score was out of 12. So place all your employees on this axis and assign a number for performance for them and have this scatter chart. You'll love this. And in my experience, teams end up in this middle area here, with some of them in this box who should be unhired. But look, the beauty of this is over time, you can move your team up to this magic quadrant in the top right corner. And when your employees are all here, as I achieved when my company was growing fast, and I went from 50 to 85 employees and was just growing by millions of dollars a year, it was when, and by the way, I wasn't having to bring all the leadership and do all the team. I was able to go on retreats, doing my meditation and my yogas each day, was when my team was all up here. Something magic happens. And this is why culture is more important than all the other strategies you might be considering. Before you do that new marketing strategy, before you go into that new market or new city or new country or launch a new product, these are all risky. But working in culture is low risk, low cost, by the way, very high return, massive ROI. So that's why culture first is so great. So that's a way to measure culture, which a lot of folks say you can't measure culture. Here's another way to measure culture. Use the NPS scale and ask your team. And most surveys have the ability, that little drop-down menu in your survey tool can probably do an NPS question. And here's the question I ask: what score would you give the company for having a great culture? And look at this company. 65% is actually quite a good score. Look, no detractors. But just 4 months later, after doing these tools that I've shared with you today, this company was getting a 90% score from their team. Really, really simple, beautiful way to measure culture over time and see how the efforts you're putting into your culture are being paid back to you with returns on your investment like this. That's really all I wanted to share with you today. And hopefully you got something from that. But people ask me all the time, Will, can this work for me? Can I put this in my company? And the answer is yes. I've done this for hundreds of companies. It's all laid out in the book here. I would love you to help your companies go from potentially having disengaged members to more engaged members by using some of these tools. I would love to see some of your employees loving where they work and who they work with. And even if they already do they have a purpose or a why to their work? So perhaps that's something that you could put in front of them. And if you hit this barcode here, it'll take you to a website and you can go and get the download the gift of culture. But also I think Haley's going to put it in the chat, right, Haley, the link, so that you can click the link and go get this as well. Let me finish with this, because basically, I know it seems overwhelming, and maybe doing 90 to 90 days seems like a lot, but it's worth it. And I remember in 2008, 2008, basically, during the Great Recession, when you remember, it was a very fearful time for me, actually, because I had a couple of businesses. One was a real estate company that, which of course I had borrowings from the bank on, and the banks were threatening to withdraw the lines of credit for those real estate investments because it was 2008, right? And cash was scarce, and particularly real estate ventures were risky. And my own company had just taken the year before $2 million of investment from a venture capital firm. And I was using that to scale up my company in 2008 when they said they did not want to put in the second tranche of $2 million. It was a total of $4 million commitment. And if they did not put that in, that was going to be catastrophic for my company. It was a supply chain software company, not the ones I showed here. I still own that company today. But I remember being very fearful and realized that if I lost the real estate company and then lost my company because the VCs did not put their money in, I could have this knock-on effect that was a little overwhelming. And to sort of bring some relief to my fear, I went into the hot tub in my backyard and I just slid down and let the water kind of wash over me. And I put my head back and I looked up and it was a clear night and all I could see was stars. And I saw the magnificence of the universe. And suddenly my fears started to sort of melt away a little bit. And I realized that, you know, my problems were not that big compared to the beauty and the amazement and all the potential that the world holds. And it came to me, I just needed to take one step at a time. I just needed to take the first step and have a plan and then start to execute my plan. And the first thing I did was go back to the VC firm and negotiate with them. And on Christmas Eve of 2008, they put in not $2 million as they'd promised, they just put in $1 million. So I got $3 million of total investment. But here's the catch. In return, they also gave me all the shares back in my company. So now I was back in control of my company with $1 million worth of cash. And I was able to go through and negotiate with the real estate company banks. And I'm still here, still got those companies. And all I had to do was make a plan and take the first step. So I know you're busy, hard to fit culture into what you're doing, but gosh, your employees will thank you for it. And Eugene and the line, I thank you for this opportunity to share the gift of culture with you and your listeners.
Thank you very much, Will. It's interesting that you sort of, one of the things that you ended on was NPS for your employees. We do ENPS within the Align software. It's something
yes,
that we do.
That's right.
It's, you know, it's one of those small things that has a significant impact. Our CEO swears by a monthly pulse of the entire workforce. Just send out a one-question survey. For those of you who are already on Align, you can do this. Talk to your Align advisor. You can send a one-question survey that says, on a scale of 1 to 10, either how likely are you to refer a friend or a colleague to come work here, or how happy are you at work, or how valued do you feel at work, or the question that you posed, you know, rate us on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how great our culture is. And what you can start to do is then track that NPS score month over month. And like you noted, if you start to implement some of these tools and habits that you talked about, you will hopefully start to see that NPS score go up, meaning your employees are more satisfied, enjoying coming to the office. It isn't a dread. And so that ENPS functionality and the ENPS tool is really, really, really powerful. Will, I have a question for you. So you talked a lot about sort of making core values and your core purpose much more visual than just being black and white letters on a sheet of paper. Now that we are more and more in hybrid workforces or remote workforces where we may not necessarily have an office or a physical space to hang posters in, how do we still do that? Oh, sorry, Will, do I need to repeat my question?
I don't think so. I think you were going to ask about how do you do this how does it work in a remote world? Right, where you got a lot of employees on, you know, working remotely on Zoom, maybe all over the world.
Right.
Yes.
We don't have a physical space anymore. We don't have anywhere to put murals up or to hang posters. by the water?
Yeah.
Or how do we still make the visual a part of our
Yes.
everyday when we're so remote?
I love it. Thank you for your question. Before I answer that, though, I would like to say, yes, I love the fact that in the Align software at the top there, you've got that little drop down for the surveys. And I've used it myself, and I think it's fantastic that you embed that tool right there, and it's so easy to use. And yeah, very powerful to run that pulse kind of a survey with your team on a regular basis. So I love that Andy is promoting that. Yes, so posters are very important. If employees are not physically in an office, how do you make use of a beautiful visual? Well, there's quite a few ways. For example, making it, and you can send it out to your employees to make it easy for them. Make it part of their desktop home screen is a great one, and have a mobile version as well for their phone, so they can make it the background for their homepage. Also, whenever you're doing a session, a team meeting or a weekly meeting or a weekly huddle or a daily huddle, have your values there that you can share there. Some other things that I've seen companies do. One is send out a mouse mat to all their employees, wherever they are in the world. So you're using your mouse right over your core values every day. Another great one is to make a jigsaw puzzle of that core values poster and send that to every home. And then you've got the fun potentially of the family, constructing the puzzle, constructing your cultural definition together and talking about the values. It's a great way for your employee to talk to their family about the values of the company they work in. So of course, mugs and pens, there's always kinds of ways you can get your core value image, core chart right in front of your employees wherever they are in the world.
Great. Those are all wonderful ideas. You also talked about, and by the way, if others who are still with us have questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. Carla just added a suggestion at the start of team meetings, have 3 to 5 minutes for staff to enter or post on a core values map of examples where other employees have lived those core values since the last meeting. That's another excellent, excellent idea.
It is, and I particularly like there that they're telling the story. So it's not just Jane shouts out Bill for value X, but tell the story. Maybe have Jane or Bill tell the story, because that's how we embed everybody, and they think, oh yeah, that's what it looks like. So I love that, Carla. Thank you very much.
Will, I have another question. So you talked about, I think you call it the core score, where you're basically taking all of your employees and you're giving them a score based on the core values and identifying who's green, yellow, and red. Who do you suggest do the scoring of the employees? Is that something sort of as a 360 review where everyone scores everyone, or is it managers scoring their direct reports? Who should be doing the scoring and how does that work?
Yeah, thank you. I love it. So at the very least, I like the leadership team to do it together for themselves. So they're actually, hopefully a leadership team at a high trust level, they're living the values. And it's okay if not every leader is scoring, 3 out of 3 on every value. So, but then the leadership team can also do that with their employees and their reports, depending on how many employees in the company. If there's a lot of employees in the company, of course, you might devolve this to other, division heads and their key teams. I have also seen teams do it with like Peer 360, yes, and using a survey tool to do that, so that can work. And I know for some people immediately they might think, oh, we're kind of ranking employees, and is that necessarily a good thing? Well, it's really important that we have some way to measure. And in healthy environments, we can hopefully do this, and it provides us with a tool to give feedback, positive and negative, to employees, so that they know how they're doing. And everybody wants to know how they're doing. And typically we do that on poor performance, but let's do that on values too. And just a reminder about that, who does it for the clients? Well, of course, I saw one company their sales team did it for their employees or for their customers, and then use that to show to management what the strategy should be around some of those customers. Yeah.
Great. You also briefly mentioned that core values, sort of once developed, shouldn't necessarily change, or they should be fairly consistent. So when are the times when you start to sort of go through the exercise of reviewing your core values to see if they still resonate with your hyper growth company? These were the core values we developed when we had 10 employees. We've now got 50 employees. Do these core values still define us as an organization? When are the sequences, or when's the good timing to sort of reevaluate those and go through that exercise again?
Yes, I like that question. And let's start right at the beginning with when a company first is founded itself. What do they do? And a lot of leaders are anxious to sort of come up with values, and they end up being the values perhaps of the leader or the entrepreneur. And I remember Vern Harnish actually saying, "Don't set your values in stone on day one." And it's really hard to do the values of an organization, even a new organization, on day one. But after a few months, you can start to discern, and discern is the right word, discern what those values might be. But don't set them in stone. Let the organization get some experience under their belt, face a couple of crises, have a couple of big wins. Then the values are going to speak more to that, the DNA of that organization. Once they're set, then I think 3-year time horizon. There should be no need to change values in that 2 to 3 year time horizon. But after that, if you're growing, a lot of new people on board, maybe the business has pivoted a little bit, and that's when I think it's worth checking in. And I have a survey that's basically aimed not at replacing the values, but refreshing the values and tweaking them. And so I find tweaks are useful every few years. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And occasionally, maybe with a merger, is a time when you got to do a redo. You're bringing two cultures together. Hopefully they're not too opposed, because that's when mergers don't go well. But yes, there are times when I think it's okay to change the values, but not often.
Again, if others have questions, please pose them. My follow-up question to that would be is sort of, how do you make, in addition to making values visual in the organization, how do you really make the core values come alive as part of the things that you do in your business? It's one thing to have core values and put them on the wall and put them on a mouse pad or a jigsaw puzzle, but how do you actually sort of live and breathe the core values and make that a part of truly the culture in the organization?
Yeah, well, of course, one of the things we love in the Align environment is huddles, daily huddles. And I love starting off our daily huddle or a weekly huddle just with, hey, has anybody got a shout out for somebody that committed a core value yesterday or last week? And that's one great way that people are every day reminded and seeing it. Another best practice for sure is having what we call at the Academy is a notice and nominate scheme. And so I don't know if the Align surveys or softwares can work for this, Eugene, but some way that employees can nominate when somebody, like if I saw Haley, doing something, that I could nominate Haley for demonstrating the core teamwork, and this is what I observed. So this is the story. So that is one of the single most important things, and it's not hokey. Have some kind of a reward or prize. People actually enjoy that, and I've seen when people stop doing that, that's when people stop remembering and about the values. That's a really key peer-to-peer, human interaction when we do that.
Will, we've had a question posed that a company's core values are generally linked to the business owner's own personal values, like you described, that when you first are starting, the core values are really the founder's core values. This person says that I have found that letting our employees set the values leaves me, I presume the founder or the leader of the organization, feeling uncomfortable. Any thoughts about that?
Yes, I definitely have thoughts about it. I love this question, and I've come across this. So, look, actually, one of my clients in Indonesia, um, successful multi-million dollar company, 100+ employees, maybe more, um, and he um, brought in a consultant to discern their core values and sort of removed himself from the process, thinking it'll be, it's much better if the employees, come up with the values because then they're going to be bought in. But he did not feel a strong affinity with the values that they came up with in his own company. And so that is what not to do. Do not delegate, divulge this. If you're the founder and the entrepreneur and the CEO, it's really important that you can lead with the values and you feel an affinity with the values. Likewise, the opposite is not ideal. If just the founder's values are sort of stamped on the organization or even the leadership team. So if those are what I don't recommend, what I do recommend is, and even if you've got values today, and I suspect this founder has values and they're mostly his values today, he could still do this exercise, do the 90s and 90 days, do a refresh, do surveys. But the surveys and interviews should tap into all the employees and get values that are throughout the organization. And you will discover values that exist, really beautiful values that are not apparent to the founder and the leadership team. And that's why those anonymous surveys are so important. And I'd be happy to make that hours available to you, but all the questions are laid out in the book as well. And here's another thing. One of our surveys, when we're trying to get into this, under the skin of the company and really realize what are the values of this organization that are going to be unique and cool and help us be different and compete, is ask our customers what values they see in us when they work with us. Who wouldn't want to know that? I know that is just amazing when we ask our customers, and we might do surveys on satisfaction, but this is the question: what values do you see in our team when you interact with our team? And those are the ones. And by the way, for example, if responsiveness comes up in that, be all over that, because responsiveness is one of the things that customers want more than anything. Eugene, I know when I work with Align and work with you, your response to me from my clients who are on the Align software is same day, next day. I value that so much, and my accessibility to you. So if you see responsiveness coming up, which happened for one of my clients, but response was not in their cultural definition. So for sure, we put responsiveness into the cultural definition. When we go hiring now, we look for people who are responsive and who naturally want to respond quick. And that's become a competitive advantage for this company. So long answer, sorry about that. But this is the way to tap the real values that exist in your organization and are not coming from one particular group, but from all the group, and maybe even from what people are seeing from outside your organization.
Great ideas. We are getting to the top of the hour. If anybody has any last minute questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. I certainly want to apologize to everybody for all of the technical difficulties that I have been experiencing today. This has been a strange morning in that regard. If there aren't any more questions, I certainly want to thank everybody for attending today's Coach webinar. A big thank you to Will for a great presentation. It has been recorded. A link will be sent to all of you. And certainly you can learn more about Will by visiting his website at theculturefix.academy. So again, that's theculturefix.academy. His email address is will@theculturefix.academy. As always, we do encourage you to use the Align software to implement some of these great business habits that Will has been talking about, using ENPS, documenting your core values, making them a part of your daily or weekly huddles. If any of you need assistance or more information about how to do that within our software, please don't hesitate to contact us at support@aligntoday.com. Thank you again. Yes, Will.
Oh, may I finish with the one thought that I'm reminded about? Because I'm a scaling up coach. I'm not sure people are aware of that. Not an official one, but I do this within the entrepreneurs organization. And I do find it best to build a great culture on top of a business operating system, like scaling up and like having the software like Align to empower that. When people have a meeting rhythm and communications and goals and things all built in, now that takes care of one layer, and now we can really build a great culture. So I find the two of these go very well together. If anybody would like to teach or take any of this to their clients, I am got an organization of coaches. So we meet each week and we share and we talk about these things, and we're doing this great noble work at our clients. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Will. Thanks again, everybody. We hope that you will join us for our next coach webinar. That is still to be determined. But until then, thanks again, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.